just share my screen.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, great. My screen is showing okay?
Yes, we can see it.
Yes.
Perfect. Yeah, so yeah, thank you very much for your time. Kind of appreciate this is quite a lengthy call for you guys to join. The first thing I just want to note is obviously I'm very English. So if I start to talk a little bit too fast, just please feel free to just kind of shout out and ask me to slow down a little bit. Also, I do, I don't like to kind of present as a bit of a robot. I do, kind of encourage you to ask questions as we go through. So feel free to, raise a hand. Michael, I think if you're okay to kind of just kind of watch, whilst I'm in presenter mode, I can't see if anyone's raised a hand. If you can just shout out that there's a question.
Mm-hmm.
That would be would be great. But as I said, feel free to stop me at any time, and I can either answer a question or we can go through the material again. But also if there are no questions, then there is time at the end for a question and answers as well. So just to make a start, what I want to start with is I'll talk through just a little bit about the history of the program, why we have the program, what the opportunity is, and so on. And then the majority of this call is I'll actually be talking through the kind of SMB program sales process. So that really is the main thing that we look to enable you on, throughout this kind of campaign process. And then the final section really will be just talking through the approved configurations, and then more importantly, how that then fits into the kind of longer term, plan of how we would support a customer on the SMB program. So just a little bit about me for those who have not met before. So I sit within our EMEA Partner Zone team. So my main responsibilities fall into kind of three buckets. The first is I'm responsible for kind of enabling you as partners, but fundamentally your kind of sales organization within your companies. A lot of kind of what that is doing is essentially how we go to market with our products. So we have certain methods and techniques. I specifically do a lot of work around our programs. So the SMB program is one of those, and it's basically looking at where do we see best practice around EMEA, around the globe, and how can we then enable you as a partner to go and replicate and see the same success as we have with other partners, maybe in other countries, and so on. Previous to me joining the team in November, I was actually a PSE in the UK, so I held that position for around 7 years. So I obviously are very familiar with the Siemens partner ecosystem and how we go to market with our partners. A lot of what I do in my new role within the Zone team is what we developed when I was a PSC. So a lot of the kind of successes that we had, I focused a lot on kind of sales structure, processes, etc. And out of that, the figures that you see at the bottom, when I joined as a PSE in the UK, we used to turn over around 4 million euros, kind of new and expansion business per year. Fast forward to FY24, the kind of UK turns over now around 13 million euros per year of new and expansion, and that in terms of new logos, we increased around 3 times the amount of new logos that we do. So we went from around 30 to 40 on average per year to around 140 per year new logos won. So, and around 80% of that business is due to the programs, etc. In terms of the revenue, around half of that 13 million is the program revenue. So it's a really significant part of the success that we've seen. That's a little bit about me. So, moving on to the SMB program. So I'll just start a little bit of an introduction into, why do we have these programs? Why do they exist? So if we look at, the kind of CE region, so obviously I sat with the partner management team, and we kind of talked through, where are the sorts of challenges, where are the focus areas, where do we typically have success, where do we have little success, or where do we have no success, and then we kind of collated these different points that would be the reasons why we've chosen to start with the SMB program from an enablement point of view. So kind of working clockwise around the wheel. Now, obviously, within CE, the actual new logo count is actually quite high in respect to a lot of other countries as across EMEA. However, there's always there's always lots of opportunity to increase that even further. Obviously, we see that. But fundamentally, what we're also looking to do is we're looking to increase the value of a typical new logo land opportunity. Now, obviously, we started with the SMB program a couple of months ago now, and the results that we've seen within CE are kind of demonstrating that we're proving that the concept works. So we've had success within around 5 to 6 weeks. So kind of closed out opportunities within 5 to 6 weeks, which is fantastic. And we've at the moment the average kind of new logo land opportunity in CE is around 3K. That was the kind of target benchmark that we had, and we wanted to use these programs to significantly increase that. So at the moment, the average new logo success is around 20K TCV. So it's again, it's we're kind of demonstrating that is working. What we also see a big opportunity within CE region is there's an opportunity to create rapidly create a CE customer base. So obviously we have a significant simulation portfolio, and we're looking to see can we kind of match that opportunity with what customers need within the region. Also, a big part of what I do from an enablement point of view, when I'm sat with partners, what we try to do is, we don't want just to have, a single campaign with a single set of success attached to that. What we want to have is this repeatable sales structure that you can kind of just do every week in, week out, and have the same success week in, week out. And that's a really big and important part of why we have this SMB program. On the left-hand side of the wheel, obviously there's this, we've got an increasing amount of export and cloud portfolio coming online. So we have NXX, Solid Edge X, we have soon to have an increasing amount of SimCenter X coming online, and naturally we have Teamcenter X and so on. And importantly, the SMB program kind of fits really nicely around how we kind of win more and more opportunities. And then some kind of additional points, obviously we go to market with digital threads and so on. So a big part of how we use the programs kind of intertwines with how we use the kind of digital thread material within Siemens. So, this isn't going to be replacing, using industry messages or anything. This is going to be working, kind of to complement what you currently do within the Siemens material that's available. And then the final point really is there's obviously we have a huge portfolio, so it's relatively common that we have a single customer that requires more than one product from Siemens. So again, where you need to cross-sell as a partner, or if you need to work with another partner to support a customer, then again, the program is a very successful way that we've demonstrated that we can do that, and we can actually support quite complex customers with the partner ecosystem, rather than that being then taken to be supported directly. But again, it's really important. It's completely, it's 100% focused on how we enable partners to kind of get the best out of our portfolio. So just to go through a couple of the options now, obviously on this call, we're going to be focusing on this campaign, which is the SMB program. The kind of why we have this program, it's primarily to kind of really aggressively target new logo wins. So we want to put you in the best position and have the best toolkit to go and target as much new business as possible. But more importantly, we want to enable you so that you can do that all the time, so every week. And the way we do that is we teach you basically the SMB program sales process. So that again, that's going to be the structure or main structure of this call. And then what we actually do with customers is we have a pre-configured bundles of software that are entirely based on eligibility. So, you have to be eligible. So it's not we don't offer this to every one of our customers. We want to try and protect the existing customers that we have, but we want to offer this and have some criteria that allows this to be targeted towards new customers to a certain level of size. What we're not going to cover on this call, but this is kind of going to be a phase 2 exercise for CEE, is I also developed a program called Scale Up Program. Now, the Scale Up Program, and the reason why I'm mentioning it just now, which will make sense on the next slide, is it's a little bit more suited to very complex displacement or multi-product displacement opportunities. So where you have customers that may be looking at an entire kind of digital transformation roadmap, again, we've developed a Scale Up program that's there specifically to go and have that type of conversation. What it's also there to do is to be the next natural step from migrating a customer from the SMB program onto utilizing more and more of our portfolio and our products and so on. So this next slide should hopefully kind of make a little bit of sense around what I've just mentioned. So if we look at it in terms of a kind of a vision setting with a customer, and how are we going to enable you as a partner to have a kind of very, very clear and concise structure that you can sit with a customer and say, right, this is the kind of long-term plan of what we can do and how we can support you. And then this is the kind of structure of how we get you there, right? Now, if we blend that with, for example, you hear about the layer structure around the SaaS business, layer structure from Siemens, it's becoming quite a de facto standard. If we overlay the program approach with layer, then really what we're doing here in this first phase of the programs is we're landing new customers with the SMB program. What we then do is with that standard configuration that we've started with, which is typically at least two products, we then get them to kind of adopt those products very, very fast. Typically, the average customer kind of signs up for around 3 years. For that, we have some customers that sign up for 1 year, and obviously the odd customer asks, can they sign up for more years? But I'd say around 95% of customers will sign up for a 3-year SMB program. What we then do is, rather than having the emphasis focusing on the renewal of the SMB program, we then look to try and migrate those customers onto the Scale Up program. Now, the Scale Up program is a 6-year program, and what that starts to do is to start to work on the commercial structure around the SMB program is basically fixed, so it doesn't decrease each year. Now, when we flip someone onto the Scale Up program, one is it moves away from a fixed configuration and it moves to a expanded configuration. So they've got the luxury of looking at the entire portfolio for the program, but more importantly, it starts to back off that discount each year with a clear line of path, and it works all the way back to what they would be referred to as a standard customer. Now, the reason why we have this structure is that we don't want your customers focusing on what's going to happen in 3 years' time. What does the renewal look like? Because it's 100% a commercial conversation, and obviously we don't want to just have a commercial conversation. What we want to do is to have this much longer term roadmap with the customers where they're seeing these as kind of key delivery milestones. So we've started with these products. We then may have a PLM project, and that's then going to be delivered by the end of year 4. We're going to have these kind of business outcomes delivered with the PLM. It may get to like year 6, and then we have a manufacturing set of business outcomes. So we kind of get the companies thinking about this long-term strategy. So their focus is not on the renewal, the focus is on how they're going to grow with you as a partner and with Siemens. I'll just stop there. Has anyone got any questions before I move on? Or and also, is the pace okay?
I don't see anything in the chat so far or raised hand.
Perfect. So in terms of the where does the opportunity sit with the program? So what we're not looking to do is to replace where you are currently successful as partners. So, where you have new logo success in your existing markets, and where you have existing customers that, they are friendly customers where they buy more software or they expand very, very easily, the programs are not there to replace that type of business. What the programs are there to do is to look at where do we not have success. So I'm a partner. I currently operate in this market. When I try and target customers that is more than 40 million euros, for example, I routinely sell them NX, and it's normally we have good success at winning. However, when I look at a company that may be 15 million euros turnover with 15 staff members, we typically struggle to sell NX to that type of customer. So the program here is really to put that type of customer in the kind of suspect list to be able to sell NX, for example. So that's why when I talk about we have an existing market with no success, that's the sort of definition or thought process behind that. So you have some success, but maybe not across the entire demographic of that industry. Obviously, lots of the partners that I work with, they're looking to expand into new industries. And again, this is a successful, proven method that's helped partners move into new industries with a new competitive offering, and so on. A lot of the business that we do, certainly on the new logo side, is highly competitive displacements. So we have quite a high count of competitive displacements that we do. So we are, it's quite common for our partners and Siemens directly to be coming up against the likes of SolidWorks, Autodesk, Ansys. It's quite a routine problem that we have. And again, the program is here to kind of tackle that head on. So we want to give you the tool set and the program method in order to go and have more and more conversations and then displace those third-party products. Within obviously specific to CE region as well is you've got the luxury where you have lots of young businesses that's that started up in the last 8 to 10 years. So again, where the SMB program plays really strong is on those types of organizations as well, where there's lots of opportunity within those businesses as they are kind of in that kind of significant growth period. So that's the new logo side. On the existing customer side, obviously, we talked about your nice customers, your friendly customers that's, it's very easy to sell to and transact with. But also you have difficult customers. So the customers that may have lots of third-party products, they may have just had, 1 or 2 licenses of Solid Edge, and it's very difficult to engage with those customers to go and try and sell and pitch the rest of our portfolio. So again, the program method is proven to open up a customer to think about the bigger picture and how you as a partner and how kind of via Siemens can support these types of customers. Where it also fits well is your very complex customers as well. So again, maybe you have someone who's working in aerospace, for example, or automotive, where they have quite a high complexity of products. And again, typically that type of company would require more and more parts of our portfolio. And again, this is a great way that we can sell that portfolio into that type of customer. But on the enablement side, as I said at the start, what we actually look to do is to teach you a sales process, right? So this is, as it stands at the moment, this is the kind of standard go-to-market for the SMB program. Now, for the rest of the call, want to get onto the second part of this call, I'm going to walk you through step by step the majority of this sales process. Not all of it, because obviously we have limited time, but I'm going to walk through a number of these different steps. Now, you notice the bits that's highlighted in orange. That really highlights where we have developed materials, and we give you those materials. So that's this different PowerPoints, spreadsheets, different materials that would allow you to utilize those materials at certain stages of the sales process. So again, I'm going to bring up and walk through a couple of those examples, and then obviously once we've completed this enablement, we'll be looking to send you a HighSpot link so you can go and kind of download and start to get familiar with the different materials that we have. So just talk about a little bit success. Where we have deployed the SMB program, it very, very quickly becomes kind of the primary source of a couple of different things. The first is it very quickly becomes the main criteria for new logos. So how we kind of engage with new logos and close out new logos. It's proven to be very strong where we have displacement opportunities. So, we the majority of the SMB program opportunities are displacement opportunities, which is really good. And then the final bit is it's a standard and proven framework for portfolio selling. So again, whether you're a big enough partner where you have multiple products that you sell, or if you as a partner need to work with another partner in order to support a single customer, again, it's a proven structure that sits behind the programs. Just talk through a couple of examples. I'll just talk through the SMB program ones. The first on the top left, a company called SpaceForge. Now, I've not used this example because of the value is quite high. So that 220k euro TCV, that's fantastic. However, the more important point is SpaceForge was a customer that when we first sold to them, when we first engaged with them, they were a company of 15 people and they just had zero revenue. So they were a very young business. They had very limited budget, and they had a finite number of staff. So it's a very, very small company. And typically, if I put a PFD hat on, these would have never made the criteria of an NX campaign. They wouldn't have even been considered as a suspect. They would have been someone that we would have sold a mainstream product to, historically. Now, when we first engaged with them, we followed the sales process. So we didn't lead with any products or anything like that. We led with the SMB program. And that was basically, we organized a call with their CEO. So we kind of used the program to get the call with the CEO. And then what we uncovered was that they were using Autodesk Fusion 360, so they were spending around €400 per year on their CAD software, and then they had like a startup license of Ansys, which they had free of charge at the start with. So again, kind of emphasizes the point that this was the type of organization that typically, with a normal sales process, we wouldn't have typically engaged with them to go and try and sell, the kind of flagship products within the portfolio. However, what actually happened was, the company very quickly bought into the SMB program. They liked how it didn't really focus on particular products, but it was focused on how we enable growth and how we enable integration and kind of solving engineering requirements. And then it was actually a 4-week turnaround that we got the first order from them. So it was only a small order. It was around 17k at the time. So it was just a 1-year contract for NX and SimCenter 3D. Well, that was around 18 months ago. And then kind of fast forward to, it was just the start of FY25. They've now migrated away from Autodesk. They've migrated away from Ansys, and Siemens branded software is now their primary kind of choice of engineering tools. And that's looking to grow and grow. So their latest renewal, which was actually more of an expansion and the renewal of the first product, they basically jumped from spending £400 a year on 400 euros a year, should I say, on Autodesk Fusion 360 to they've spent 220k euros with us on a 3-year contract for NX, SimCenter 3D, and Star CCM Plus. Additionally, they're also looking to expand into, they now have a kind of a PLM requirement, and we have another 150k euro opportunity for Teamcenter, and so on. So again, kind of just proving the point that we take a very small customer that we wouldn't normally have some success with because it'd just be too expensive, and we get them into the mindset. We use the program to get them on board, and then we expand them very, very quickly. The second example is JCK. Now, JCK had, they're industrial machinery. They typically supply into the likes of automotive companies. So kind of, they're part of like a line builder process. And again, JCK, very, very small organization. I think they have around 18 staff still. But they typically they would have been in the market for a very small or kind of niche products for things for that, things like plant simulation or process simulation, for example. Now, again, we used exactly the same sales process. So even though the requirements were different, we followed exactly the same SMB sales process as we do with all of our opportunities that close out. And again, this took around 3 months from the first meeting to the PO. But we positioned the program. We got them talking about the kind of bigger picture about, as an organization, as a team, how do they currently function? What types of projects do they typically work on? And what we discovered was that they had this kind of vast variety of different simulation requirements on the machinery side. So the fact that we then had the program bundle that matched with their requirements meant that it was very easy for them to just go and make a decision on choosing Siemens software. And again, as much as the commercials are very aggressive, it was still worth to the partner. I think it was worth around 110k, but to the Siemens part of that for the software side was worth around 70k euros. And again, a good example of a customer that wouldn't traditionally have acquired something like Telematics or NX and so on. Does anyone have any questions before I move on to the part 2?
I don't see anything in the chat.
Okay, perfect. So to move on to the sales process, so going back to this, what I'll now do in this second part of the call is I'll walk through from left to right to kind of try and give you an idea of how we kind of guide a customer through a very structured sales process and fundamentally kind of move them very quickly to a close. So to start with, obviously we have the suspect list. So where do we start? Who are we going to go and target? Now, if we take the CE eligibility criteria at the moment, obviously it's being reviewed, as some of you may have heard at the start of the call. But at the moment, we have a revenue cap of 20 million euros in the previous year. And typically that is being targeted towards a company that designs or makes a product and so on. And more importantly, this is a new logo type activity. So when you're building your suspect criteria, it becomes very straightforward because you have this governing criteria that companies have to fit in order to be eligible for this program, etc. As I said, it is being reviewed at the moment, so that the revenue cap may change in the very near future. For the purpose of this part of the call, I'll base the sales process as if I'm talking about the product engineering stack that you have in front of you here. So from an engagement point of view, again, there's a couple of main points that we talk about. So the first main point that I want you to take away is we don't lead with products. We lead with the SMB program. Now, there's a very simple reason for this. Now, if you're a customer, you've got one of your customers or one of your new logo suspects, they're expecting a Siemens partner to pick up the phone and either talk about one of our products or they're expecting us to talk about an industry message, right? Now, when we talk about some of those messages, especially the product side, it's very easy for a customer to object about what we're talking about. So if we're going with Solid Edge or NX, it's very easy for them to say, "Can I stop you there? We currently use SolidWorks. We're happy with that. Everything is fine. Nothing is broken. Thank you very much. Move on to the next call." That's quite a common scenario that we have. Now, when you introduce an SMB program, those customers are not expecting us to lead with that type of message. And more importantly, because they don't know what the SMB program is, and basically they don't have anything to compare it against existing. So they can't say, we have this program, and they can't say, well, is it to do with CAD? Is it to do with manufacturing? They have no idea what it's to do. So what it does is it naturally makes people a little bit more curious about learning more about this program that we're telling them that they meet the eligibility criteria for, right? So that's the main reason why we use the SMB program message as a reason to open the door with a new logo opportunity, right? So it's again, it's proven to do that time and time again. What we do as part of this enablement is we give you the text or an example text. Obviously, that text is provided in English, but obviously you can translate or do something similar in local language. But fundamentally, the messaging is a very simple, either single line or kind of a couple of sentences that is very to the point. And typically, most of our partners, they will either do that as a connection request on LinkedIn, so they'll edit the connection request and they'll send it via that rather than a message. Or if they've got the email, they'll first start off with sending that as an email. But again, it's a very straight to the point, short bit of text with a simple call to action is, I purely want to have a call to introduce you to the SMB program. So it's nothing more than that. We're not mentioning products or anything industry. It's just the program. Right? If you follow that structure, I can promise you that you'll have kind of similar success that we see with other partners. So just to kind of look about what does that actually look like. So if I'm a Siemens employee or a PSE, typically, we can obviously directly reference that we're from Siemens. So we can talk directly about, we have this SMB program. I'm responsible in this country, for example, and I'd like to introduce, have a call and introduce you to the program. Obviously, we have, most of what I do is for the partners. So obviously, you can't directly say you work for Siemens. However, you can say, obviously, you're a Siemens partner and are part of the Siemens SMB program delivery ecosystem. So again, we have standard text that you can just use on either LinkedIn or either or email or something like that, with the intention that you're looking to set up the call with that customers. Typically, we run this in very small batches. So on if I'm an individual salesperson, I would try and reach out to around 5 new logos per week. So something that can very easily fit around your day-to-day business and activities, with the target intention of having around 1 to 2 meetings out of those 5 outbound activities. So that's the kind of typical success rate that we see. So kind of 1 to 2 in every 5 that we reach out to. So relatively good conversion rates. Once we I've kind of done that, as I said, the call to action is to have this kind of SMB program introductory call. So, hopefully what you're seeing here as part of the sales process is it's very structured in terms of there's a very distinct call to action for each stage. So as you're walking through, what you're actually doing is you're guiding a suspect opportunity, turning it into a prospect whilst qualifying, but you're kind of guiding through your sales process rather than a customer saying, I'd like to have a demonstration first. We kind of, it's very easy to object to that request when it's too soon, because we would rather follow them, ask them to follow this path. And the good thing is we have lots of success with this. So you can confidently say as a partner, this is the kind of method that we follow, and these the biggest success of onboarding customers that then go and subsequently meet those engineering requirements and so on. So on to the next stage, which is the first call. So what does this look like? Again, just a couple of kind of points to note on this. So typically, it's a 60-minute Teams call. Obviously, if you can do face-to-face, that's fantastic. But for the majority, I think we have this kind of 60-minute Teams call. And it's a very structured call. So what you do is, I'll be providing you with the materials to use. So we have, in this case, we have the SMB pitch. It's a PowerPoint deck that will be available on Highspot to you after this enablement session. And we typically spend around 20 to 30 minutes just talking through that in conjunction with the, talking through the eligibility criteria. What's quite interesting is, when we get to the eligibility side of things, you'll actually see your, the kind of people that you're talking to, they'll move to their second screen or they'll move to their other screen, and they'll be literally looking to see if they meet the eligibility criteria. So they'll be trying to check, do we do we turn over less than 20 million? You know, I want to be eligible for this program. It's quite interesting that, you know, companies seem to do that. And it's literally every single call that I do with customers, it's exactly the same. You know, they just seem to, they get to that stage and they start to check because we sort of play on the psychology is that there's this opportunity that they want to be part of. So again, there's a reason why we have that eligibility criteria, and the reason why we emphasize it so much is because it does play with the psychology of the sales process and so on. So there's a little bit of method to the madness with that. The rest of the call, which is typically 30-40 minutes, is just standard discovery call, you know, so kind of standard customer questioning, but fundamentally we've used the SMB program to kind of warm the customer up. So we have the customer engaging with us. We have them, you know, ready to talk through some existing engineering processes, you know, where some of the gaps are. And what we see is the kind of guard is down. So even though that they know they have competitive software, because we're not talking about products, you know, we're not emphasizing products that much. We're talking about this program. It really brings that guard down with the customer, and they start to talk about, well, you know, this is how we currently do things. This may be the plan that we're working towards. This is some of the engineering challenges that we have, and so on and so forth. So very quickly, you know, we have a method that gets you the call in the first place, and then that method then uncovers and breaks down the barrier with the customer to get them to talk to us and have that good kind of engaged conversation. And going back to the sales process, again, guess what? There's at the end of call one, there's a very distinct call to action. Now, the call to action for, in this case, after call one, is to have what we call a kind of a ROM cost call. So we finish this call with, thank you for the discussion. We've validated that you're interested in the program. What we'll now do is we'll organize a second call, but we'll actually put together a couple of different configurations. Now, what we mean by that is we're going to put together a little stack of software, and we're going to put some costs against that as well. So you kind of get an idea of what does it take to be involved in this SMB program. Typically, we organize that call as soon as possible, ideally the next day or the next few days. The reason why we don't do it on the one call is because it kind of creates a little bit of constructive tension with the customer. So they're now sort of in anticipation, waiting for us to have this second call because obviously it involves costs, etc. The reason why we have the costs done so early is that we obviously we want to qualify the customer in or out as soon as possible from a budgeting point of view. So before we get to the expensive part of the sales process, which is like doing demonstrations or proof of concepts, or if it's CAM, we might be doing some kind of on-site manufacturing throughput exercises and benchmarks, etc. Obviously, that is a very expensive part of the sales process. So we would much rather you as a partner be going into that part of the sales process with the confidence that if you prove what you say you're going to do, they've got the budget ready to go, rather than waiting for, kind of further down in the sales process. But before we move on to into call two, I just want to walk you through what does the SMB program pitch actually look like. So this is the actual deck now of what we'll actually deliver you. So this is the kind of customer facing version of this first call. So it starts really with kind of like why why do we have this SMB program? Now, the talk track really around this deck, it's more positioning and getting the customer into thinking, well, what does a typical Siemens customer require from us as a partner, right? And it really puts them to the picture that we are, we're kind of enabling the customer to have the best available products, but also fundamentally, once, as they grow as a business, we have this kind of extended portfolio that is not limited. It's not a capped portfolio, so they can grow and they can have the confidence that it's future-proof. So that's the bulk of the talk track that we'll talk through. But starting with the why, it's just a simple slide that I choose to use, which is around kind of emphasizing that in order to create a best-in-class product today in today's markets around the world, no matter what industry you're in, it typically requires an integrated approach to engineering. It's as simple as that. no longer can you compete if you have this kind of siloed functions of mechanical, electrical, simulation is attached, etc. The best companies these days have more and more integrated workflows. And just to visualize that, again, I use this slide to talk through, this is what a typical Siemens customer looks like. They have a roadmap, they have requirements where they want to have not just this kind of siloed approach, but they want to have this kind of end-to-end closed loop products design and development and manufacturing cycle. So again, just trying to put a little bit of a visualization on what does a typical customer from Siemens talk about? What do they ask from us? And so on. And then just to finalize that kind of why phase of the SMB program is we do kind of just talk with these kind of three terms. So it's about putting you in a position where you have this integrated end-to-end collaboration. So all of your teams, no matter where they sit, they're able to kind of communicate very easily and have this kind of workflow from one stage to the next in the development life cycle. Where we can, we want to obviously have some of that as automated as possible as well. So how do we apply things like apply automation, for example, from CAD to simulation? How do we automate certain processes, like, for example, change, and so on? So it's around kind of the kind of innovation around that. And then again, a final piece is, no matter what type of validation or verification you need to do, again, that needs to be integrated into the life cycle of the engineering tool set, and so on. So those three slides, they are, as much as I've just talked through them pretty quick, the kind of focus on the talk track is around, what do we typically see in industry? What does a typical Siemens customer ask us to fix? Then we move on to introducing the program. So at this stage, this is when we do start to introduce some of our branding, kind of product branding. However, as much as we are here, we don't talk about it in terms of this is NX and this is SimCenter and this is Teamcenter. What we typically talk about is, as an SMB, these types of products are typically out of reach, for the average SMB customer. Now, so these are typically seen with enterprise level customers. However, the majority of our SMBs require or have the same level of product complexity as an enterprise customer does. It's just that the enterprise customer is much larger in terms of headcount or what they sell, right? But the product complexity is actually quite apparent within our SMB customers as well. So the program is here to try and match your existing requirements and some of where currently where some of your gaps are within the product engineering cycle, or if you're looking to integrate certain landscapes together, it's how do we bring those products into a framework that's basically within reach to you as a customer. So when I always use this example. What we're really talking about is say if you currently have SolidWorks, or you're looking to do some further analysis of a product, etc. How can you put the best of breed process in place? So how can you have a very integrated workflow from CAD to simulation and back that is then securely managed with something like Teamcenter? So that's really around. So we're not really talking about this is NX and this is what it does. This is SimCenter and this is what it does. It's really just talking about the emphasis of we're talking about an integrated workflow that most SMBs struggle to have based on the tool sets that they have existing. So that's the end of that slide. What we then do is we then talk about the options. So this is really around how they want it to be deployed. Is it going to be on premise with standard licensing, or is it going to be in the cloud with some of our X products, and so on. So very, very simple slide. And then obviously the big one again is the SMB program. It has fixed special commercial pricing. So if you are eligible, then that automatically enables you to have the fixed commercial structure of the SMB program. So again, just very, very simple slide. It's there to still be, to kind of start to tee up that second call and so on. And then in terms of, when we then come to the final section of the program deck, this is talking about, what are the current options and what is the eligibility criteria and so on. So in terms of CE region, we have 4 different options. We have products engineering. We have advanced products engineering, which is a little bit more simulation focused. We have advanced manufacturing, and we have advanced automotive bundles. So these are kind of 4 standard bundles that's available. And typically we're looking to start a new logo on one of these 4 different bundles and so on. I'll come on to a little bit more detail about what they look like towards the end. But again, what this is, this slide is not just talking about the bundles or what we start with. It's, on the right-hand side, we have this kind of notion of it's ready to scale. So this is where we start. So there's always there's quite a big leap to get you to have this kind of integrated tool set that is, flagship products at SMB level pricing, right? When you're ready, you have the kind of luxury of the rest of the Siemens portfolio to grow into. So when you're ready to add PLM in more thing, whether you're ready to move to, something like Op Center, we have all of the capabilities ready, and we can then scale that with you at the business. So again, it's around setting the expectation that this isn't a deal. This is really kind of a roadmap and a kind of a technology partnership for you as a partner. Then the final section of this deck is then finishing with the eligibility criteria. So again, as I mentioned, this is the time when your customer that you're talking to, they'll be looking at the other screen now, and they'll be checking if they meet this eligibility criteria, and so on. If available, you can do the sort of good cop, bad cop thing where you could also, if there's someone within Siemens, either a PSE, a PME, or a PFD available, that Siemens person can be responsible for the eligibility check. So they can basically say, I have, for example, Michael on the call. Michael is responsible for kind of approving or checking the eligibility criteria, and then obviously, Michael, you can then step in and say, right, we're happy that you meet the criteria. Great news. And then you then start to close the call with, this is what our next step is. So we're going to have this. We're going to organize a second call tomorrow. Let's do that for 30 minutes, for example. And on that call, we're going to create a couple of configurations based on what you've told us today. And again, assuming that you would have obviously had a little bit of a discovery session for the remainder of the call with that customer. Right. So I've just done a lot of talking there. And does anyone have any questions or any kind of comments on what that kind of pitch deck looks like?
Nothing in the chat so far.
Okay, you're a very easy audience today. I think, you're making it very easy for me. No questions.
I think we need to just manually pick someone.
Maybe one question for me. What does mean less than 20 million revenue? It's a revenue. It's a financial situation customer. It's a similar like startup.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
We just discussed with the market. I think I will discuss with Eiji and with the market also to increase it to the threshold from 20 to something more. So in C, we just agreed to increase it to 50. Because a lot of, let's say, a huge number of the companies which are eligible in terms of the number of the license are then not eligible by number of the revenue because, there were several situations. So we just increase it to 50.
Okay. Thank you.
Yeah. No problem. Any other questions before we move on?
I think no questions in the chat, so we can go.
Yeah, great stuff. Okay. So moving on to the next stage of the sales process. So as I said before, there's always a very distinct call to action at the end of each call. That is, again, this is pre-populated, so we know exactly, before we engage with the customer, we know exactly how we're going to guide them through the sales process. The vast majority of customers will just follow the sales process that we guide. So it's a very nice way that you're kind of doing exactly the same with each customer. So it becomes very familiar as well. Where this also works really well, just as a little side point, is as a partner, when you onboard new salespeople, again, this is a very nice way that we've proven to onboard salespeople really fast. So we basically get them to learn the sales process, follow this step by step. learn the materials, and then very quickly they become familiar with being successful in selling our portfolio as well. So again, it could also be used for new hires that you have. So as I always start with call 2, here's some kind of points to note. So again, typically this is a Teams call. Typically it's around 30 to 60 minutes, depending on how involved the discussion needs to be. Now I will be providing you with an SMB spreadsheet, so that it's not there to replace our price book. It's just there to make it a little bit easier so that you can build ROM costs. So ROM means a rough order of magnitude, if anyone's not familiar with that term. So it's kind of an estimated cost at this stage. Now the spreadsheet is there to just make that more efficient, because obviously, rather than you having to keep looking price book and get the latest price and stuff, the spreadsheet will just allow you to quickly put some figures together, a configuration together, and so on. What we don't do at this stage is we do not send a proposal or a quote. Right? There's a reason to this method. Now, if you if your existing process, and this is quite common with a lot of the partners that I work with, is when a customer asks for costs or a quote, we say yes, no problem, we'll have that over right away, and then you'll go and create a proposal, or you'll create a quote, and then you'll send that across on email, and then in maybe 1 or 2 days you'll hopefully have another conversation with them, and you'll ask what did you think of the quote, what did you think of the figures, right? And you'll hopefully get some feedback, right? What we do differently here is we don't send a proposal or a quote. We use the second call to actually talk through the proposal with them, and the reason we do that is we get their instant feedback of whether this is in budget or not, right? So rather than waiting to follow up a proposal or a quote, we get the instant feedback of, I'm looking you in the eye on this Teams call, and I'm going to gauge straight away whether you tell me or not whether this is in budget or not, right? And again, we're doing this very, very early in the sales cycle, and we purposely do it early for the reasons that I mentioned before, right? What is also quite important, and again, this applies to the SMB program, but I think it's just good practice to do this anyway, is always have 2 different ROM cost options at this stage. Now, the reason for this is, again, it's quite common, when someone asks you for a proposal or a quote, you'll send them exactly what they need, right? So if someone's said, send me a quote for NX, you'll send a quote, and typically if we're in a competitive situation, their benchmark cost is either the competition quote or what they currently pay for their maintenance or their subscription of that software. Now, when you send 2 options, it removes the benchmark from being the competitor or their incumbent software, because they now have to think about which is the best option from Siemens, right? So again, it's a very, very subtle change to how you talk about different proposals and different options, but I can tell you now, it works, like unbelievably works better than just sending 1 option to that customer. And again, what we're doing here is we have the blend of 2 options that we're going to talk through face-to-face on a call, So again, we're getting that instant live feedback of what their thought process is. What we're also looking to do, again, is to get them to challenge us. So if we haven't quite got the configurations right, we use that to eke out further information from them. So we've said, well, we think you have 5 engineers that do CAD, and we think you have 2 engineers that we're required to do some sort of analysis and so on. And what we want is the customer to actually disagree with us and say, actually, we have 7 people that are involved in CAD, and we have 3 people that are involved in simulation. So we want them to actively challenge us with that. But what we're actually doing is we're uncovering real information so that we can refine the configuration down very, very quickly. And again, because we're doing this face-to-face on a call, it's much easier to get that information back from the customer. And more importantly, what we're looking to do is we're looking to get kind of a thumbs up, yes, one of these configurations is within budget, and so on. And again, the call to action then is either an on-site meeting or some sort of demonstration, which I'll come on to a bit later on. So just to talk through that, this is the materials that we start with. So I'll be providing you with a spreadsheet, and on that spreadsheet, you'll have kind of the standard configurations that's available to your region. And this calculator then just works out exactly, what the customer-facing price will be. In this case, right? So it's just, you're able to edit these fields. Obviously, what we do ask is just, because obviously this is a spreadsheet, just check that do a periodical check that the prices haven't changed, or if there's been a price change, typically we'll send a new version if there's been a significant price increase or anything. But all we're looking to do is just there to be a tool to just build a quick configuration, so that we're trying to make the process as efficient as possible, so that you're spending more time with the customers rather than doing the admin of Pricebook. So that's an internal spreadsheet, so it's not there to be visible to the customer. It's just an internal spreadsheet for you as a partner to quickly build the configuration. For the customer call side, we have a template which again will be delivered to you via HighSpot that will be available for the second call. Now this the actual complete deck contains some of the slides that was on the pitch deck, so kind of a summary of the program, and then it quickly moves on to the configuration. So as I said before, golden rule with this is have two options. Now the easiest two options that you can have with the SMB program is to, on the first configuration, just have what is the minimum configuration. So pick one of the 4 different bundles, and you have one as the minimum configuration. Now, in this case, as I said at the start, I'm using the Advanced Products Engineering bundle, right? So that's the stack of software, kind of talk through, we have the eligibility criteria available again. And then on the next slide, we then have a breakdown of the costs, right? So again, taken directly from the spreadsheet, we just literally list out year by year what is the reoccurring costs of the software based on the SMB program commercial structure and so on. What you also can do on this slide is to add any additional services, so maybe some training, or if there's any consultancy required, you would add that into, again, as an estimate at this stage. So it's not a final proposal; it's just an estimate, an indication for the purpose of budget testing and so on. What this slide also does is it explains that if you naturally as a customer, if you then grow, so obviously we onboard you as an SMB program customer, after 1 year, you've increased your staff by 3 people, you can buy additional licenses and you can add those in at the same rate as the original SMB program. And you can either do that in a pro rata, so kind of, for example, it might be a 2-year term instead of a 3-year term to sync it up, or you may just look to add them in under 3-year proposals and so on. So that would be from option 1. What you would then do is your option 2 would be more the likely configuration that you're looking to sell that customer. So in this case, I'm going to talk through a scenario where we have a customer that has 5, users of CAD, which then naturally slightly increases the number of tokens that we would expect them to use. And also we would need, out of those 5, on average, 2 of those would be concurrently doing some sort of analysis work at the same time. And again, the type of analysis work would only require 100 tokens in this example, right? Then to talk through the commercials. Now, this is where it becomes really compelling for the customers. So as much as the 1 user example was around 14.5K, when we talk about the 5 user example, it hasn't increased 5 times because we're able to modularize the licenses. It's gone to an average, of around 6,000 euros per user per year. So if you think about like an average customer, like for example, a SolidWorks customer that may be spending 1,000 or 2,000 euros per year on their existing tool sets, what we're now doing is we have a much higher grade of software, plus we have the analysis software, and we have a small jump per user, in cost, but we have enough value and enough of a leap that makes that possible for the majority of customers. right? So that's a really important point of, why once you get to a multi-user environment, when you start to play with the configuration on the user count stage, it becomes very, very palatable. So the kind of more users that they add, the kind of lower the cost becomes per user, and so on and so forth. So that's the kind of end of that second call. And again, the kind of call to action really is then this on-site visit. Now, for the purpose of this call, obviously we've not got a lot of time, so I'm going to just kind of stop talking through the sales process from there. But the main reason for that as well is obviously you as individual partners, you all have slightly different ways that you would then continue the sales process. So the idea with this is the standard structure that we have for the SMB program. However, for example, if you're heavily involved in simulation as a partner, things like proof of concepts or benchmarks become more apparent than doing just a standard demonstration. So you would look to replace this step to be, after your second call, you may go through a product benchmark, or you may go to some sort of proof of concepts. So what I want you to do is to kind of take this template and then blend that with what would you typically do at the technical proving stage of the sales process. So the bit in between qualifying commercially, being comfortable with the technical side, but then kind of doing the technical demonstration side before you get to the proposal and the onboarding, and so on. So I'll stop there. A bit more time for questions. Does anyone get any thoughts or comments on that?
I don't have any questions right now.
Okay.
And
yeah, okay, no problem. Okay, so in terms of the kind of packages that we have, this is the kind of broader breakdown of ones that we have. So we have a Solid Edge focused starter pack. So this is typically can be either standard on-premise Solid Edge, or it can be Solid Edge X. The more success that we had more recently in CE has actually been with Solid Edge X, which is good to see. And again, there's going to be a supplement document that's going to be available on HighSpot to you very shortly that will have the kind of breakdown of what all of these packages actually look like. So similarly, we have an NX starter package. So again, when we include either Solid Edge or NXX, naturally that comes with Teamcenter X Essentials. So again, if you kind of think about these starter packages as kind of potentially combination with the CAD and some sort of PDM to start with. So the intention with those packs is that then gives you a line of sight to grow into a PLM type customer. Right? When we move to the advanced packages, we have basically 3 different ones to choose as a starting point. The first one is the manufacturing package. So this again could be either NX CAM X or it could just be NX CAM and so on with the subsequent tokens and the subsequent CAD attached to that. So it's a CAD CAM type manufacturing package. On the next one is the simulation package. So again, this is very similar to the one that I went through as the example. So it's a combination of NX and SimCenter 3D. So again, it's the kind of value prop with that. Again, similar to the CAD CAM, is the integration between CAD and simulation. Where obviously the CAM one was the integration between CAD and CAM. So on. And then the final one, which is specific to the CE region, is an automotive pack. And again, this is here to target the automotive supply chain that typically have something like CATIA or SolidWorks and so on. And then in addition to that, there is some flexibility to add on some Teamcenter components to any of the above packages. So for example, if they are going to continue with some third-party CAD software for a period of time. So as again, there's going to be a document that you'll have access to that lists out all of these products in these packages in detail. So one of the main questions that comes up with the program is what happens after year 4. After year 3. So what happens at the start of year 4? And naturally, when the customer is asking this question, they're asking this in terms of, am I going to go up to list price after the end of this SMB program? Well, what we don't want to do is to just have the kind of program fixed on around the commercials, because it really is not about the commercial structure. What we want the program to be is the kind of way that you would communicate a kind of a path of growth, and how you're going to support them over the long term. So that's really what we want to have with the user programs for. Now, the way we do this is we just use this one very simple slide, right? Where we talk about, what are the options when we get to year 4? What are the actual options that you have? Now, obviously, within CE region, you have lots of startup customers. So again, you can use this slide for those startup customers, where you can say, where are they transitioning onto the SMB program, or we transition you onto the scale-up program. Obviously, the scale-up program we've not done. We're planning to do the enablement, but we're not yet agreed a time frame for that. So if I just focus on the SMB program, the talk track around this slide is really getting the customer to flip from a commercial question to thinking about, well, we don't really know where your business is going to be in 3 years' time. So the best way that we can support you is by having options based on where is your business at in 3 years' time. So let's say that you've signed up on the SMB program and you're on the program for the first 3 years. That's fine. You've chosen, you've gone with one of the stacks of software that may have grown slightly since you started the program. Now, if your requirements don't change in that 3 years, so by the time we get to year 4, if your requirements are the same and you still meet the eligibility criteria in year 4, then you can sign up for another 3 years on the SMB program for the products that you have, right? And you'll get the same commercial structure. The only difference will be is that the list price would have changed, because obviously it's in 3 years' time, but we don't really know what that list price will look like by the time we get there. So that's scenario number 1. Scenario number 2. So on the other hand side, we're now in a situation where your business has significantly grown, so it may be a much more complex organization, or you simply just need more and more products from the Siemens portfolio. So you've moved into manufacturing, you need further enhancements for PLM, for example. You may need processes around requirements management, or help in the sales process or the bid process, etc. So, what we then have is the second option, in this case, I was talking about it from the SMB program context. We have the next option is our scale-up program. Now, the scale-up program has a higher set of eligibility criteria. So again, the average across EMEA is 100 million, but very similar. But the main difference with the scale-up program is it's offered to new and existing customers, and so on. Now, what that gets the customer thinking of now, so if my business stays the same, I stay on the SMB program. If my business grows, or if my requirements grow, I move on to the scale-up program, right? So the customer is now satisfied that we have 2 different options that's going to be available to them in 3 years' time. So it's brought down that barrier, that objection is it going to be list price in year 4? To we've now got these 2 options depending on where my business is at. Now, ideally, we're looking to transition customers onto the scale-up program. So as a partner, you then start to grow that footprint into more kind of parts of our portfolio. What it also does is it starts to reduce the discount level with that customer, but it does it over a 6-year period. So it's a very long cycle that we talk about. So going back to the start of this presentation, again, we're sort of getting the customer to think about a 9 or 10-year kind of roadmap with you as a partner. Does anyone have any questions on that? That's normally one of the questions that get asked on these types of calls. No? All good? Okay, so that's the end of the main slides. There's one more slide after this, which is the kind of recommended next steps. Just kind of open the floor now, or Michael, if you want to add any comments, let's just feel free to ask any questions around any of the slides that I've gone through so far. No, this is one of my easiest calls today, this week, I think.
Okay.
With the questions.
I think due to the time we lost Marek and Peter, so two main decision drivers for both of the partners.
Okay.
But we lost them at 3, actually, both of them.
No, hello guys. I'm still listening, and I'm traveling in the car, so I'm not able to watch the slides, but I'm following, and I have to read it thoroughly when I come home. So I'm still in. Thank you.
Maybe
no problem, Petra. Yeah.
I was just looking how many customers are eligible for this. Meanwhile, we were discussing, and
yeah,
I land actually just what I'm doing is I put minimum revenue 100K, maximum revenue 50K, 50 millions in Czech Republic. And the only thing is I'm looking for keywords on the websites, of their websites: SolidWorks, CATIA, Inventor, and Creo. So those 4 products, and I'm now on the number of 700 companies, so 722 exactly. Yeah. So there is a lot of work in Czech Republic compared to, in average in CE we have like 200 companies per country. In Czech Republic is 700, so a lot of room to work.
Yeah, no, that's good to hear. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
That's really good to hear.
Can I ask you? Sorry, Mark. Can I ask you a question concerning marketing side? You said everything will be on HighSpot. These presentations and some white sheets. Will there be something of especially for marketing for me to help the sales guys?
So typically with the partners that work with the programs, they've just developed their own kind of single either landing page, or they've created like a little kind of email flyer for this. Obviously, because we're not allowed to talk kind of promote pricing structures or discounts, we as Siemens we don't provide that for that reason. However, what I do provide you with is all of the materials in order to kind of execute the sales process as much as possible. So you can hopefully use that to build out a marketing campaign to kind of complement what the sales team need to do. Yeah.
Thank you.
Yeah, no problem. So to kind of go with the final slide, and again, if you take, Michael, you've just mentioned 722 companies within Czech Republic, which is a good starting point. Now, where we have seen some good success with this is if we break that down into a smaller set of cadence on a weekly basis. And again, what's also quite important is we want your feedback for is the messaging working? How can we look to refine this? Etc. So I think we're still, as much as we've already launched in CE, we've already seen some good success. So we know that it's working. We still want your feedback in terms of are there any areas that you see as areas of improvement that we can look to introduce? Now, as a rough guide, if we take a starting point and say, let's say for each partner starts with in the next month we want to target 20 new logos per salesperson, right? So that's basically 5 suspects per week, 5 suspect companies per week. So we'll define them. Obviously, Michael, you've already started to look at the definition of those, which is great. But then The reason why we do it on a week-by-week basis is that we're looking to kind of get the same metrics as we get before. So rather than doing it as one big exercise, if we say, if every salesperson reached out to 5 per week with the intention of getting 1 to 2 meetings per week, it's quite a significant amount of new business meetings that we start to have with these opportunities. And the idea is then that we then start to convert those into sales pipeline as quick as possible. And again, the call to action is just that simple SMB program introductory call, and so on. The way we help to track and measure this, obviously you may have a separate campaign that this would have been attached to, so it may be a product campaign that this may be attached to, but the way we track it from an EMEA level is we ask if you can put the kind of code in the bottom into the miscellaneous field of our Siemens Salesforce, where the kind of suspect opportunity sits. So that then allows us to kind of track the success, how it's working, how it's being received across EMEA, and it also helps kind of me look at pinpointing each different part of EMEA. Where do I need to focus my time to kind of increase the amount of opportunity that we can develop together? So, and as I said, on the scale up program side, we're planning to enable the region on the scale up program. The scale program is a little bit more detailed and a little bit more informed. So that will require a face-to-face workshop, especially a one-day workshop that I do with the partners. But again, that's going to be planned in the sort of short to medium term frame.
Okay.
Yeah. Okay, so that's the end of my presentation. As I say, I'll also be sharing this presentation with you via HighSpot link. But if I just stop sharing my screen so I can see everybody.
Some of the people already left, so we are only 4 people.
Yeah.
I think timing is not the best time. But nevertheless, most of the people stayed up to 3:10, 3:15. I will deliver the presentation. We've already discussed the marketing part of the story. Okay.